In Mexico, Parliament began the debate on energy reform, a government initiative aimed at strengthening public participation in energy production. The United States registered a record number of asylum seekers detained at the border in a month. And Russian diplomacy warned of the environmental and international security risk of increased NATO activities in the Arctic. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We are going to begin with the news, and we're going to do so in Mexico because the Parliament began the debate on the energy reform, a government initiative aimed at strengthening public participation in energy production. The ordinary session of the lower house was set to begin after 11 a.m. local time, and it is expected to continue until midnight. 488 of the 500 lawmakers that make up the chambers of plenary sessions are participating, debating, and voting on a constitutional reform promoted by President Andrés Manuel López Obrador. The sole purpose of this proposed energy reform is to recover the Mexican state's stewardship and responsibility over its natural resources, which the Conservative parties, headed by the National Action Party and the Institutional Revolutionary Party, intend to hand over to foreigners, as Enrique Peña Nieto did during the last term. Throughout Saturday night and early Sunday morning, legislators from the Institutional Revolutionary Party, the Democratic Revolution Party, and the National Action Party remain in the San Lazaro legislative precinct to avoid, as they have said, being blocked from entering due to the mobilizations that have been announced for this day. For their part, those congressmen who support the electricity reform have held meetings to define strategy for the two scheduled sessions, as others have dedicated themselves to explain the scope and terms of the reform. Panama's social, labor, and human rights movement have expressed rejection at the presence of U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken in their country. They consider that, as usual, the official's agenda has a hidden face. Secretary Blinken has announced that he will be in Panama from April 19th to the 21st, to the information shared by his office. He will travel to this nation with the purpose of discussing safe routes for the migration that transits through the South, with final destination to the United States. However, Panamanian organizations affirm that the President's masked strategies to contain the waves that foreseeable will occur until the law known as Title 42 is lifted. They also question the supposed idea of guaranteeing safe, orderly, and humane migration, which is denied to other countries such as Cuba. Opposition parties in Colombia have been the target of attacks and threats. One of the headquarters of Colombia Humana was assaulted, and militants from communes received threats from the criminal organization Black Eagles. The party of the presidential formula of Gustavo Petro and Francia Marquez suffered an attack at its headquarters in Bogota. The perpetrator broke windows and cut the alarm. Just a few hours later, members of the party assured that they received threats from the Black Eagles in a message they share on their social networks. In the pamphlet, you can read the names of Carlos Antonio Lozada, Sandra Ramirez, and Paulo Catatumbo, in addition to several social leaders. The leaders of Colombia Humana assured that they also stole materials from their headquarters in the capital region.
I am here to inform you that they broke that fence. They broke the glass, they got in, they took out some things. I don't know what they put in there, but this thing was here. Mr. Camargo called me. Here is a security officer, and look, it is 2 o'clock in the morning. We were robbed at the headquarters of Colombia Humana, Pacto Histórico.
In South Africa, a state of high alert remains in effect due to the new torrential rains claimed nearly 450 lives in the east of the country. According to authorities, there was significant damage to roads, electricity poles, various government infrastructures, as well as to educational institutions and homes. The effects of the heavy rains in the province of KwaZulu-Natal have so far left about 13,000 people affected, and authorities have had to create. Meanwhile, members of law enforcement agencies continue their search and rescue efforts. The Meteorological Service of South Africa warned that more rains are expected in parts of the province in the coming days. The government allocated $68 million to assist thousands of people affected.
1.8 billion that is needed to be able to do interventions. Reprioritization is currently being finalized of about 1 billion to KwaZulu-Natal. This will provide 4,000 temporary shelters. This is the people that we are talking about who are currently displaced. Some of them are in the halls that are needing accommodation.
Our aim overall is to enable everybody to get access to water while we are building up whatever capacities in our infrastructure. There are a number of other things, of course, that will be done in regard to reticulation, and quite a number of them, apart from tankering, repairs, minor repairs on pipes. There will be use of technology. There will be O&M repairs and so on.
In the Philippines, at least 172 people have died and 110 are missing following the passage of Tropical Storm Maggie, which has also displaced almost 400,000 inhabitants. According to a report from the National Council for Disaster Risk Reduction and Management released on Sunday, a total of 76 cities and municipalities are still without power several days after the storm hit the place. Authorities are still maintaining search and rescue operations for the missing in Baiba City. So far, is considered the most deadly for the country. Its patches in 2013 left more than 6,000 people dead and about 4 million displaced. China registered this Sunday a total of 26,155 cases of COVID-19 and a high number of symptomatic cases in Shanghai. The National Health Commission explained that at least 24,820 patients have been detected in the province, while the remaining infected patients have been confirmed in 13 districts. According to health authorities, these have been caused by the Omicron variant. Today, China has accumulated more than 14,000 deaths and 527,000 in Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan. The zero against the virus continues to be reinforced by the country, leading to the precaution that each province has been taking to avoid a large-scale rebound such as the one that has occurred in Shanghai. We are taking a short break. Join us again for this. Welcome back to From the South. In the United States, some 220,000 asylum seekers were detained by border forces during the month of March, the highest number in the last 20 years. According to official data from the authorities, at least 11,000 migrants are mainly from Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador attempting to enter a legal crossing in the southwest of U.S. border in March without a valid visa or permit, representing an increase of 24% over 2021, and the highest number of arrests recorded since February 2000. Government representatives warned that migration could increase even more after President Joe Biden announced an early border closure due to the COVID-19 pandemic. In France, 65% of the people who voted for Jean-Luc Mélenchon in the first round of the presidential elections will not support Emmanuel Macron in the runoff. According to a recently published survey, 37.6% of French voters who supported Mélenchon will vote blank or null, while 28.9% will abstain from voting in the elections of April 24th. According to the survey, 33.4% of French people who supported the country's left-wing candidate declared that they will vote in favor of the current head of state. The polls comes after Mélenchon, who won 22% of the vote in a close race in the first round of the elections, called on his supporters not to cast a single vote for the far-right Marine Le Pen. The United Nations Refugee Agency accused the United Kingdom of double standards in its treatment of illegal refugees in the country. The agency's Deputy High Commissioner for Protection, Gillian Triggs, stated that the UNHCR strongly opposes the United Kingdom's new migration policy of transferring asylum seekers to Rwanda without standards and safeguards. In this regard, the Commissioner pointed out that people fleeing conflict and persecution deserve compassion and empathy and should not be treated as if they were a commodity. Triggs also denounced that the Kingdom is introducing a discriminatory approach to refugees, granting asylum to displaced Ukrainians and putting them in place in an unfair system for refugees from other countries. The statement comes after a new migration policy in which any illegal arriving in the country since January 1st will be resettled in Rwanda. A large demonstration took place in London, the capital of the United Kingdom, called by the environmental movement Extinction Rebellion, which for the past week has been carrying out actions to put an end to the use of fossil fuels. This Saturday, a large crowd protested in the streets of London, warning about electric energy and demanding the immediate halt on structures linked to fossil fuels. The organizers confirmed the presence of numerous demonstrators who occupied the Marble Arch neighborhood near Hyde Park during a sitting that could also be experienced in other European cities. In Sweden, new riots break out in demonstrations against ultra-right-wing groups. According to Swedish police, on Saturday night there were fires in several places in the city of Malmö. Officials reported that in days there have been clashes with citizens who reject gatherings of the anti-immigration, anti-Islamic movement which is touring the country. Security forces also stated that the incidents occurred due to the plans of the extreme right-wing group to publicly burn copies of the Quran. Russian diplomacy warns of environmental and international security risks for increased NATO activities in the Arctic. The chairman of the High Committee of the Arctic Council, Nikolai Korchunov, stated that the recent military exercises carried out by the Atlantic Alliance in northern Norway do not contribute to guaranteeing security in the region. The diplomat also pointed out that the entry of Arctic countries such as Finland and Sweden to NATO does not contribute to security and confidence. He also warned that NATO's activities include non-Arctic countries, which is a cause for concern about possible unintended confrontations in the region. Finally, he stressed that Western countries cannot guarantee sustainable development in the Arctic without Russia. The deadline granted by the Donbas militias and the Russian army to the remnants of the Ukrainian nationalist battalions entrenched in Mariupol has already expired. Moscow has promised to guarantee their rights and integrity if they surrender peacefully, but Kiev threatens them with death if they do so. The Donbas People's Militia, backed by the Russian army, have taken control of this important port city located in the southeastern Ukraine. After the battle, some Ukrainian servicemen are blockaded at the Azovstal steelworks in conditions that the Russian Defense Ministry described as catastrophic. The soldiers are asking Kiev for permission to surrender but are being threatened with death if they do so, according to one of 367 intercepts recorded by the Russian Defense Ministry. In Ukraine, Russian air defense systems shot down a military transport plane loaded with Western equipment and armaments. Russian Defense Ministry spokesman Igor Konashenko informed that the plane was shot down inside the airspace of Odessa in southern Ukraine. Konashenko also said that two shot down over the settlements of Losova and Vesala, adding that the Russian Air Force destroyed 67 strategic sites of military personnel and equipment. The spokesman stated that Russian missile troops struck 317 military installations, 274 assembly areas, 24 command posts, and 2 fuel facilities in the last 24 hours. In Germany, food industry entrepreneurs warned that an eventual veto on Russian gas would have serious consequences on the economy. According to the leader of the NGG Food Syndicate, Guido Seidler, the embargo on Russian gas supplies would cause disruptions in the work of the German food industry. Seidler pointed out that for environmental reasons, many companies have switched from oil to gas as a fuel for their industrial processes. Reversing this process, according to the NGG president, would not be easy and would lead to an increase in the cost of production, which would mainly affect small and medium-sized companies, some of which would be forced to close down. The Russian State Road Company has agreed with its counterpart in China to progressively increase the circulation of trains through the connection points between both countries. Russia and China plan to increase freight rail transport, and the first cross-border rail bridge between the two countries is expected to start operating in the next few months, thus boosting bilateral trade. In April, freight train traffic has already increased by 37% compared to the previous month. There has also been an increase in the transport of Russian cargo by rail to China via Kazakhstan and Mongolia, according to the company's data. On the other hand, this will be the first cross-border railway bridge between the two countries, with a viaduct of 2.2 kilometers at a cost of $355 million. And we have more news after a final short break, so stay with us. From the south, in Palestine, Israeli police prevent entry to Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. Israeli police entered this Sunday the mosque compound, one of the points of pilgrimage and importance for the Islamic religion due to the fact that the Prophet Muhammad traveled from Mecca to Jerusalem, where he finally ascended to the heavens. According to Israeli authorities, security forces took over the holy site to secure the entrance of Jewish visitors. Local sources report that fueled violence at the site and left at least 17 Palestinians injured. Tensions between Jews and Muslims have risen in recent days, mainly due to the religious festivities of Easter and Ramadan.
My wife has died and we want to hold her funeral and pray for her, but they won't let us in. They don't let anyone into Al-Aqsa because the police say that young people make trouble.
According to figures provided by Wafa News Agency in the framework of the Palestinian Prisoners' Day, 4,450 remain in prison by the Israeli regime. The published report reveals that since the beginning of 2021, Israeli security forces arrested 2,140 Palestinians. Out of those, some 530 are under so-called administrative detention used by Tel Aviv to arrest these citizens for recurring periods, usually ranging from 3 to 6 months, on the basis of evidence that even the defendant's lawyers is not allowed to see. Last Friday alone, during the raid on the Al-Aqsa Mosque in East Jerusalem, 450 were arrested, of whom more than 100 are still being held by prison authorities. The Israeli Occupation Army announced on Sunday the end of border closures imposed on the West Bank and the Gaza Strip after the violent repression against Palestinian mosques in the middle of the celebration of the holy month of Ramadan. After injuring more than and murdering a teenager, the occupying forces decided to lift the border closure due to the evidence reported in the last few hours. The Ministry of Defense issued a brief statement after the condemnation by several countries of the brutality of their actions, in which it informed that no closures will be imposed in Judea and Samaria, in the West Bank during the Holm, which are the intermediate days of Passover, although they warned that they will continue to evaluate the situation. The government of Pakistan announced that it has carried out attacks on Afghan soils in response to ambushes by armed groups against its troops on the Afghan border. The United Nations organization is investigating Pakistani attacks in Just and Kunar, as reported would have left at least 40 civilians dead, but the investigations are not yet conclusive to provide a precise number of victims. Pakistan assures that they respect the national sovereignty and independence of Afghanistan to work with the government. The chief spokesman of the Taliban government, Mujahid, warned Islamabad not to test the patience of the Afghan people and demanded that its neighboring country do not make new mistakes. Iran decided to transfer machines to Natanz, located in the Isfahan province, to safeguard its security after an act of sabotage against the nuclear complex Tezakarai a year ago. The spokesman of the Atomic Energy Organization of Iran, Behruz Kamalvandi, informed that the transfer of the machines is part of the reinforcement of security measures that have been taken since the sabotage occurred on June 23rd of last year, had seriously affected the cameras of the nuclear complex. For this reason, the centrifuges were moved to Natanz and to the city of Isfahan. The spokesman also stressed that Iran intends to develop and manufacture this type of equipment while increasing security against any threats. The military junta ruling in Myanmar has released this Sunday more than 1,600 prisoners from all the prisons in the country. The amnesty is a gesture to mark the celebration of the Buddhist New Year. Amid new protests also organized to commemorate the date, thousands of Burmese crowd around the prisons to find out if their relatives are among the 1,619 detainees. The junta, which has been in power since February 2021, has not provided details of those released, including 42 foreigners. There is also no mention of whether the junta led by General Min Aung Hlaing would release those linked to the 2021 uprisings once they took over. According to the Association for the Assistance of Political Prisoners, more than 13,000 arbitrary arrests have taken place during these protests. This April 17, Syria commemorates the 76th anniversary of its independence from French colonialism. People celebrate the date and history of their ancestors, for which they will continue to fight until liberating their homeland from occupation and terrorism. Several countries of the world have already made public their expressions of respect and admiration to the Arab nation. The governor of Nicaragua sent a message to President Bashar al-Assad. In Brazil, internet users share images of buildings with the colors of the Syrian flag in the city of Sao Paulo. On July 24, 2020, 3,000 men gathered around the then Minister of Defense, Youssef al-Asmeh, to fight against the French invasion. Despite the inequality of troops and weapons, they resisted fighting for 26 years until April 17, 1946, when they achieved their independence. We have come to the end of this news. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For teleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.